Hello, welcome to DecentraLounge, brought to you by GlobalStake, your institutional SOC 2 Type 2 certified, truly decentralized bare metal staking service provider. Joining us today is Keesan Mahalingam, CFA, the CEO and co-founder of Torram, a pioneering infrastructure platform bringing institutional-grade decentralized finance directly to Bitcoin's base layer. With a robust background in finance and asset management, Keesan has held roles in firms like Concordium and Argo Blockchain, where he led business development and innovation initiatives. At Torram, Keesan is spearheading efforts to bridge traditional finance with the decentralized world by developing critical middleware solutions. These include decentralized oracles, indexers, and APIs designed to enable real-world asset tokenization and other advanced financial applications natively on Bitcoin. Torram's mission is to unlock the next $1 trillion in value on Bitcoin by providing secure, scalable, and compliant infrastructure tailored for institutional use. With strategic backing from prominent investors like Draper Associates and Blockchain Founders Fund, Torram is poised to redefine the financial landscape by making Bitcoin a viable platform for complex financial operations. Keesan, we're excited to have you on today. Thank you so much for being here. Why don't we just start off with how you got involved in the blockchain and Web3 space and what brought you over here from TradFi and just kind of explore that beginnings.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that intro. Thank you. It covered a lot. But yeah, you know, my beginnings start in capital markets and in asset management specifically. You know, when I came out of school, 18, went to University of Waterloo, graduated with a degree in economics, started climbing that whole corporate ladder on Bay Street in Toronto very, very early on. Spent the first 8 years of my career in asset management, back office on the mutual fund ops side, all the way to, the front office. I got my CFA charter in 2015. And then at the height of it, I was writing a $2 billion fixed income book at CI Global Asset Management on the rates desk. And so seeing all sides of it on the TradFi side, as far as some of the problems that they were facing in back office and mid office, with like reconciliation and all that stuff on the trading side. Ended up buying my first Bitcoin in 2016. The first time, we read the white paper was 2013. Kind of ignored it. We were like, what is this funny money stuff, on the trading desk. And then it came back around 2016. Some of my really good friends had bought Bitcoin, and then they were like, hey, you got to get in, you got to read the white paper again. Like, this is the next big thing. And so they added me to like a WhatsApp alpha group. And so there was like, 15 people in this group, and everybody was like buying from a crypto broker inside of this group. And so they added me in, and it was like a trust circle thing, and, put my first 10K in and bought my first Bitcoin. And then pretty much never looked back since then. Once you go down that rabbit hole, then I went into the Ethereum white paper and all that stuff, started attending conferences. And then 2017, I was like, you know what, I'm going to jump out of TradFi into Web3 full time.
Really cool backstory. I mean, so was it the promise of Bitcoin? Like when you said you read the white paper the first time, and you kind of ignored it, but then once you jumped in full time, you started to realize the promise of what this was unleashing in this whole industry. Were you even thinking about Torram that early on and what that would look like? Or has this something that developed over time?
I mean, it's funny because back in the day, and if you ask anybody that comes from traditional finance, I think they would agree. The definition to us of DeFi was like, how do we bring traditional financial markets onto distributed ledger technology and blockchains and like integrate the two, right? It was never, creating new tokens and then staking them and liquid staking them and restaking them and then calling this thing DeFi, right? It was always about how do we bring, equities and fixed income assets and money markets and all this stuff to the blockchain rails. So I feel like what I'm building now is literally the idea that I had back then, like 8 years ago, which was like, how do we one day get, price feeds like Bloomberg API data and all that stuff onto the Bitcoin network so that we have the data there to then create tokenized assets on Bitcoin, like, US treasuries, money market assets, like let's say T0 assets as an example, and ETFs and funds and stuff like that. and start using and unlocking the Bitcoin network as a settlement layer, right? Because it is the number one most trusted and secure settlement layer in the world. And so somewhere along the way, this whole narrative spun out about Bitcoin just being the store of value, just being this digital gold asset. And it's like everybody has forgotten that the Bitcoin network is a lot more valuable as well, but it's just untapped and unused because the infrastructure is not there yet to be able to actually build applications on top of Bitcoin. And so going through all these different ecosystems, I eventually came back to Bitcoin for that reason after the Taproot upgrade, because now there was the functionality there to be able to build things on top of Bitcoin. And so last year, when I was looking at some of the primitives that were missing in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and when I say primitives, I mean like the actual core stuff that enabled ETH DeFi, as an example, was smart contracts, Oracle networks, indexers, and then like a programmable token, right? And so now we're able to actually build that entire middleware stack on Bitcoin, which means that will unlock not just Bitcoin DeFi in the sense of, hey, now I can make my Bitcoin more useful outside of just keeping it there, on the balance sheet or as a corporate asset, but actually bridging TradFi onto the Bitcoin network as a settlement layer.
So this is, now that we're kind of delving into Torram a little bit, one of the things that we know, and it seems like there are several teams that are trying to work on these different approaches. Bitcoin as part of the broader DeFi ecosystem is hardly used, right? It's like 0.3% versus 30% with ETH. So it's like 100x opportunity in terms of just tapping into that liquidity. And it's clearly the king of all the digital assets, right? It represents 2/3 of the entire digital asset market when we think of just like the valuation of it. And so maybe let's start getting into what Torram does exactly and how you're kind of overcoming some of the technical challenges, right? Because we think about Bitcoin, there's obviously no smart contracts. There's limited programmability because it's mostly a scripting language, the original code and stuff like that. So really curious to hear more about what you guys are building for that middleware solution and how it's going to connect directly to the base layer with Bitcoin.
Yeah. So, when we first started out, and when I first wrote the white paper for like AI enhanced decentralized Oracle networks on Bitcoin, it was about a year ago, roughly. And the first idea was like, hey, we need to bring real world price data onto Bitcoin. That was like the first solution, right? Because there was other companies that were working on programmability and stuff like that, and so I was like the only one, like nobody's working on an actual decentralized Oracle network, and so that had evolved over time to where we are now, where we decided to build the entire middleware stack because we realized that there's a lot of fragmentation in different ecosystems, including Bitcoin, and the fragmentation is around the different pieces of infrastructure that are all critical to actually make something useful. And so we decided it's better if we just build the whole stack, because then from an institutional perspective, they would only have to trust one other entity at that point instead of multiple entities, right? And so how we built this is sort of like, so Torram itself is a meta protocol that sits on top of the Bitcoin network. So it handles, we built out the programmability part of it too, which is coming out in a couple of weeks, but pretty much the execution and the data availability happens on the Torram network, but all the data itself is posted directly to Bitcoin. So the difference between like us and let's say like an L2 is that all the L2s are EVM chains. They're not really Bitcoin native anything. It's pretty much like a side chain that batches a bunch of transactions, and then they send something through a centralized sequencer, as an example, to Bitcoin for finality. For us, we don't have that because we have a decentralized network. So there is no centralized sequencer, right? There's nothing EVM here, right? We're just handling the execution and the data availability because obviously Bitcoin network doesn't have programmability, right? So we're handling that on the meta protocol, but then all the data is actually being inscribed on Bitcoin, right? So, our testnet alpha we launched a couple of weeks ago, and we brought 30 different data feeds to Bitcoin, including some of the TradFi pricing. So we brought like the VIX, the S&P 500, Dow Jones, a bunch of the major indices first to kind of show what was possible to some of the financial institutions. Like, hey, we can actually, like, if you guys have a fund that prices daily, we can bring that daily NAV price onto Bitcoin and post it there so everybody can see it, immutable, transparent, on the Bitcoin blockchain. right? And then we obviously brought in all the crypto native pricing that people would need for stable coins, for DeFi, for lending, lending and borrowing platforms and stuff like that. So that was phase one, and then we started onboarding the validators. So it's the other thing we did. To decentralize the network, obviously you need multiple people running nodes in the network, right? So that's when we reach out to you guys at GlobalStake, plus many of the other institutional stakers as well that collectively all stake billions in assets, and everybody was super hyped and super excited to finally do something on the Bitcoin network, right? Like this is the thing, like everybody wants to come back to Bitcoin, right? We had 5,000 validator signups in less than 72 hours to join the network, right? Which just shows that it was validation for us, right? Because when we started building this, people were always like, oh, like, why on Bitcoin? Why this? Why now? And I was like, why not on Bitcoin, right? Like, why on any other chain if you can do it on Bitcoin, right? And so, yeah, so that was the first phase of it. And then the next phase is coming up, which is programmability. And then we'll start onboarding stable coins and RWA tokenization platforms and all this stuff. So then we'll actually be able to see applications using Torram and Bitcoin for settlement.
No, that's awesome. And I think, you alluded to it earlier, the timing of all the recent developments in the industry, and I think that may impact your next answer, but what strategies are you employing to onboard institutional level clients onto a Bitcoin native DeFi platform? So like, given the technical nature of the product, how are you educating potential users who may not have knowledge of the blockchain industry and the technology underlying everything about its benefits and use cases and, the power of what you can build on it?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of that comes from just spending time, right? Like spending time educating. That's part of the reason why I travel to all these conferences and I spend a lot of time in New York, with the financial institutions and stuff themselves as well, and then Paris obviously for Europe. But it's as a guy that comes from the same industry, who comes from asset management and capital markets and stuff like that, I kind of speak the same language as them as far as all the red tape involved, the slow processes, what it takes to go through UAT testing, all that kind of stuff, right? So these conversations are early, but we pretty much have to start them now, right? So if we start them now, we might make some progress 6 months from now, as far as being able to pilot something and start doing things on chain with them. But when I present the option that, hey, if we can make Bitcoin more useful and unlock the Bitcoin network, would you use it? I haven't heard a no yet from anybody, right? Because if they can do it all on any chain that wasn't some sort of internal private blockchain that they're using right now, the only other chain they would want to use it is Bitcoin, right? And Bitcoin at scale, like they might do things on other chains and pilot stuff and see what happens, but what I'm hearing or what I'm feeling as far as the conversations go is that if we can do it all on Bitcoin, everybody's in, right? And then the next phase of that is, okay, like how? Right? Like walk us through the steps, right? And so we are talking to some large institutions, some ETF wrapper companies, some mutual fund wrapper companies, some indice, like indice providers, and they're all super interested. They're all engaged, right? They're all like, tell me how. Right. And it's the same thing happened on the miner side, right? Because when I presented an opportunity for miners to repurpose old ASICs, as an example, and like old ASICs and old rigs that are outdated, to start, let's say, running nodes on the Bitcoin network, because they can just repurpose them, just run the same Bitcoin Core client software as an example, and then run our Torram node client software, they're all listening. Right, but because that's a huge problem that they have, right? We're solving problems that these people have, right? So they're super receptive, and I think part of it comes from my background. Obviously, like coming from finance makes it a lot easier. Just when you kind of speak the same language, it's not my kind of first time trying to build something here, and it's not like I just came, out of school or something, and I'm trying to solve a problem for institutional finance. Like I have no idea of what's going on. You know what I mean? So it's like. The problems that are there, I faced a lot of them myself when I was working in back office. I was doing the reconciliation example for like T0 assets, T1, T2 assets, right? And it's a headache, it's a nightmare. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of phone calls between you and the custodian and the trader and the dealer and the broker dealers, and it's like they want to use blockchains to solve a T0 reconciliation problem, right? So it's like if you can solve that problem for them using DLTs, or in this case, the Bitcoin network, then why would they not listen, right?
Yeah, I identify with that heavily as someone who worked on a middle office team at a prime broker. I remember when we went from T+3 to T+2. Even that
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, the use case is definitely there, and one of the first assets they're all looking at is obviously like money market and short-term fixed income assets, because they all settle T0 if not T1, right? And so T0 assets make it even harder, right? Because it's same day settlement cycles. So like, and then they run into the issues of like, if you have a lot of high or unmatched trade orders, then you get red flagged and stuff by certain systems and red flagged by certain organizations and stuff like that. So they're trying to keep all these numbers down as far as failed trades and unmatched trades. And so blockchains help solve that problem. And again, if you can do it natively on Bitcoin and you can have tokenized assets, like let's just say even just money market assets move to tokenized assets, not the entire world of financial products, but just repo market assets and the money market funds and treasuries. That'd be a huge lift off of a lot of these financial institutions, because that is a big part of their business.
Probably a slightly more technical question, because getting into all the things that you're trying to accomplish with Torram and putting these things on chain, is the DA is notoriously tiny, right? Like on Bitcoin, is it something where the Torram middleware is going to help package that in a way where you can directly post these things to the Bitcoin network itself? Because like, as you said, all these different financial instruments would be a huge amount of value that you're actually like also bringing with the chain, putting on the chain, confirming on the chain, and keeping everything there as part of the distributed ledger. So just kind of curious maybe to get a little bit more of that technical insight for how you guys are trying to overcome this challenge.
Yeah, so on the Torram chain itself, we can produce blocks up to 1 second. So 60 seconds up to 1 second. So we solve that native scalability problem right there. So we're not susceptible only to like the 10-minute block times in this instance. And then we have we generate our own Merkle root transaction and send the hash over to the Bitcoin network, right? And so another thing that we heard from some of the institutions is that they would kind of want privacy preservation of like this golden data set that they have, right? Like you don't want to reveal the details of like, let's say Citi is sending JPM like 25 million for like some sort of net settlement on some FX deal or something, right? You don't want that golden kind of data set of information being shown to all these validators before it's actually finalized onto the main chain, right? So we're also incorporating some sort of privacy preservation mechanism in here that kind of, shakes up the puzzle in a sense, where you can't actually make sense of it until it's actually posted. And this will kind of stop any sort of front running or any sort of, trading activity that would happen knowing a trade order before it's actually executed. Right. So we are working on a few, really cool things based on a lot of the feedback that we've had and some of the discussions that we've had with financial institutions. But yeah, I don't want to get too much into like the alpha stuff of what we have, because we're building it still. So like once it's out, everyone will kind of see it. But yeah, it's definitely institutional focus, because we're listening to what institutions want, and we're listening to some of the headaches, and we're listening to, if they were to use it, these are the basic requirements that have to be there, right? And if they're not there, they can't use it. And that's just from like a rules and regulations and law perspective, right?
No, it's great that you've created that feedback loop. I think we at GlobalStake operate very much in the same manner, just trying to understand what the institutions want, and this is why, for instance, bare metal and being SOC 2 certified is very attractive to them. Just knowing you're getting sort of that kind of rigor involved in just the process of your build out. So really incredible that you guys are thinking about these things long term. So maybe talk about the future a little bit, where we are currently with Torram, what's going to happen next in terms of a rough timeline, and just to give people an idea of what's coming down the pike, so to speak, and when these tools and everything else will be fully available.
Yeah, so I mean, this decentralized Oracle and indexing network is out on testnet. Programmability is coming roughly in the next month or so, and then we pioneered the programmable token standard and open sourced it, and that's out there on the Bitcoin repo or the Bitcoin GitHub repo that anybody can kind of look at, and that is so we're kind of waiting on a bit number from the Bitcoin core community for that. But with or without that, I mean, once we get it, it'll be officially the Bitcoin standard, the newest Bitcoin standard after ordinals and runes and all that stuff. But before that, I mean, this is the programmable token standard that we're going to be using within the Torram network itself. And we've already started working on certain wallet integrations and stuff like that for the token. Before it launches, we're expecting to do mainnet roughly Q1 next year. So we're going to give ourselves some time to figure out all the bugs and kinks and all that stuff on testnet. Work with partners on both sides, like crypto natives, and then some TradFi partners, and actually figure out all the pieces of the puzzle on testnet first. And then by the time we launch on mainnet, we'll kind of have most, if not everything, kind of figured out. Regarding the Torram network and regarding the new token standard and everything as well. So yeah, I mean, the future is this, right? Like for me, I see Torram as building the rails for the future of institutional finance, right? And that starts with levels of adoption. So that starts with bringing on newer, let's say, Bitcoin native stablecoins, right? And then bringing on the giant stablecoins that we all know, right? And then working with a lot of these bigger multi-billion-dollar market cap companies and bringing them onto the Bitcoin network, and then eventually bringing something like the Bloomberg API to the Bitcoin network, right? For TradFi, like once we have kind of 2 or 3 RWA tokenization platforms that are successful, right? And I think it's all going to happen sooner than we think. I think everybody's really hype on the Bitcoin ecosystem. Everybody really wants to see Bitcoin DeFi. Everybody really wants to see this entire industry kind of take off. And what I kind of tell people is I think our infrastructure will be a critical piece of, Bitcoin DeFi summer 2026. Because I think by the time we get to mainnet and then all these applications start building on top of us, it's automatically from day one going to give Bitcoin more utility, right? And so that's what's really going to cause spikes in the price of Bitcoin, yes, but also actually make Bitcoin the network more useful. And the more useful you can make the network, that's where the price appreciation ends up coming from too, right? It's not just speculation on the store of value asset, but if you can actually start bringing utility to the network, then you get organic price appreciation from it, right?
No, and I think everyone involved is extremely excited about the future of not just Torram, but the Bitcoin ecosystem as a whole. And for those who are excited listening about what we're building, what's the best place to follow along with the team, stay updated, or even get involved with Torram online?
Yeah, for us, definitely follow us on Twitter at Torram_XYZ. You can go to the website, Torram.xyz. The white paper 2.0 came out last month. The testnet alpha is also out. We have a builders group as well. You can find on Twitter on the link tree. So if you're a builder, definitely join that Telegram group. And we're also opening our seed round next month. So we're raising a $2.8 million seed round. So if you're an investor, VC, or somebody interested in kind of growing the Bitcoin eco or investing in B2B infrastructure on the Bitcoin ecosystem, definitely reach out to me. You can hit me up at Keesan on Telegram or at Keesan on Twitter DMs.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here today with us, Keesan. We've had a fantastic conversation. Really exciting learning more about Torram and what you guys are building. And for those of you who are watching or listening, thank you for tuning in to another episode of DecentraLounge. Be sure to follow those links. We'll make sure to have all of those in our show notes, both on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So looking forward to the next episode. Keesan, thanks so much for being here. And for the rest of you who are watching and listening, see you next time on DecentraLounge. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Keesan.